There are two teams in the NFL that are undefeated through 5 weeks, and both are in the NFC. And both of these teams were in the conference championship last year, and both look to be on the path to meet there again this year. These teams are, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. And through 5 weeks, especially in the 49ers case, they look like they're on a collision course to meet in the final week of January for the second straight season. And in today's video, we're going to break down why the NFC runs through two teams. That also isn't to say that the NFC Championship is 100% locked in already, because it's not. But through 5 weeks, the Eagles and 49ers are the best two teams in the conference. And we will break down why each team is so good, potential threats to each team, what they can do moving forward, and if these teams meet again in the NFC Championship game, well, hopefully both teams are healthy this time around. But there is a lot to dive into in today's video as to why each team is so dominant, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the Philadelphia Eagles and why they are such a good team, and it breaks down to a few things. One, their roster is amongst the most complete in the NFL, and if you look at this roster, truly where is a weakness? Where is a spot that as an opposing coordinator on either side of the ball, you can point and say this is where we are going to attack when it comes hell or high water, and this is who we are going to try and beat all game long. The only real weakness on this roster to me is at corner, and it's how opposing teams move the football on the Eagles. I mean, guys, we're at the point where opposing offenses really don't even try to run the football because they, a lot of the time, know it's a waste of a play, and if you're trying to on 1st and 10, at best you're going to get to 2nd and 5 because of how stacked this defensive front is. To give you an idea of how good the Eagles are at stuffing the run, they're 2nd in rushing attempts, 1st in rushing yards, and 4th in yards per carry allowed defensively. And being 2nd in rushing attempts allowed is really a huge credit to the Eagles defense because they've already instilled that fear of not wanting to run the ball against them before the game starts. And in 5 games, they've allowed 306 yards rushing, with 107 coming against the Commanders alone. And even with the Commanders game factored in, they're allowing just 61.2 rushing yards per game, which is insanely low, and this plays into what the Eagles want to do defensively because they want you to pass the football. They want you in 3rd and 7 situations or longer so they can get after the quarterback. They want you to have to figure out a way to block Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and a pretty good rookie by the name of Jalen Carter all in one play. And because it's 3rd and long and the opposing offense knows these guys are going to be getting after the quarterback, they know they have to get the ball out quick, which also favors the Eagles because they can play a lot more aggressive than other teams because of how dominant their pass rush is. So in a lot of games and in a lot of situations, the Eagles have won the mental battle a lot of the time before the game even starts because the opposing offense knows they're going to be in for a long day. And this in turn helps the offense because a lot of the time the Eagles are getting off the field defensively, and offensively they can do what they do best, which is run the ball and chew the clock. And through 5 weeks, the Eagles rank 1st in rushing attempts, 2nd in rushing yards, and 6th in yards per carry. And having a running quarterback in Jalen Hurts will naturally skew the team rushing statistics because they're going to have a lot more carries for a single player. And for reference, think about how little someone like Joe Burrow runs the ball for the Bengals versus what Jalen does for the Eagles. And even through the first 5 games, what really scares me for future Eagles opponents is they're still figuring it out. I still don't think they've played a complete game or completely maximized what this offense can do. Yes, they've had 4 games with over 400 yards of offense, and even 2 games with 34 points. But when this offense is humming, I really think they can have a 480 or 500 yard game along with 40 plus points, and I think Eagles fans would agree with that, knowing the sheer amount of talent they have on offense. This is an offense that has at least 5, if not 6, hell, maybe even 7 Pro Bowl caliber players, and through the first 4 games, their tight end in Dallas Goedert, who, by the way, is coming off of back-to-back 700-yard seasons, had just 13 catches for 88 yards. And in week 5, they decided to really get Dallas the ball, and he came through as he had an 8-catch, 117-yard, 1-touchdown game. And this is why the Eagles are such a nightmare to game plan against. against. Devonta Smith is a very, very talented receiver, and I think he could easily be a 14 or 1500 yard player in another offense, but the Eagles didn't need him in week 5 against the Rams, and they still had over 450 yards of offense with a great receiver having just one catch for 6 yards. The one concern I have with the Eagles, and obviously this applies to every team, not just the Birds, but how healthy can everyone stay from October through February? And on top of it for Philly, their schedule is brutal, and while they are 5-0, they have a very tough stretch coming up, and you could even say it starts this week against the Jets. Will Philly beat the Jets? Probably yes, but the defense is no slouch, and after the Jets game, they play the Dolphins, the Commanders in Washington, and the Cowboys at home. I know hyping up the Cowboys at the moment would not go over well, especially with how they played in week 5, but I'd be surprised if this wasn't a close game between these teams. They then have a week 10 bye, and after the week 10 bye, they have what I think is the toughest 5-game span anyone in the league has to play at any point this year. Off the bye, they play in Kansas City on Monday night, then play Buffalo and San Francisco at home, then play Dallas and Seattle on the road. And unsurprisingly, I do think they'll lose 1, if not 2 games during this stretch, because this patch of games is absolutely brutal for anybody. And what's unfortunate for Philly and how this could, I don't want to say derail their season, but significantly impact their season, is losing any 2 or 3 of these games in this stretch could be the difference between the 1 and 2 seed, which is huge in today's NFL. Having that bye week for them and having home field advantage for the 2 games they would play en route to another Super Bowl appearance would be critical for them, and especially the guys in the trenches. There's no doubt Jason Kelce and the offensive line would want an extra week off before preparing for what would be the second and probably the final ring of his career, assuming he retires after this season, with a Super Bowl win. And for Philly, so far at least through the first 5 games, it's been a lot of fun and games, but this is where the true quest for the second Super Bowl starts. Because from week 6 through 15 is absolute hell for anybody, and it will be extremely interesting to see how they fare during this stretch. And for the 49ers, guys, this is a unit. They're 5-0 and have scored at least 30 points in all 5 games, including 77 points over the last 2 weeks. They absolutely dismantled the Cowboys in week 5 on Sunday night, and it was as ugly of a game as you'll see from an opposing contender. This was the true test for Dallas to see if they were ready to hang with the big dogs, and after a 38-3 win over the Patriots in week 4, Dallas was served not just a slice, but an entire humble pie. They had just 197 yards on offense for the entire game, and they had just 8 first downs along with 4 turnovers. Nobody was questioning how good the 49ers were entering this game, as they've proved time and time again they are an absolute force over the past few years, but this annihilation of the Cowboys only reinforced it. Brock Purdy is playing great football as he is completing over 72% of his passes on the year and has 9 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in 5 games. Christian McCaffrey is legitimately in the MVP conversation, as through 5 games, he has nearly 700 yards of offense along with 8 total touchdowns, and oh yeah, he scored in this game. Again. And like we mentioned with the Eagles and how they hardly used Dallas Goedert in the first 4 weeks, the same applies with the 49ers and how they hardly used George Kittle outside of 1 game. George has 3 games this year with 30 yards or less, and in the Week 3 game against the Giants, he had 7 catches for 90 yards, and in Week 5 against Dallas, he had 3 catches for 67 yards, all of which went for touchdowns. And what's insane about the 49ers offense is it's very much a unit that can and will pick and choose how they want to beat you because they have no weaknesses. From a skill position standpoint, that is, because I know the Niner gang is quietly worried about the right tackle position. But that worry can kind of be eased when the 49ers are on their game and they're getting the ball out quick, and not only are they getting the ball out quick, but when they're running the ball effectively too. The Eagles' schedule they have coming up is absolutely brutal, and while the 49ers isn't anywhere close to as difficult, I wouldn't say it's a cakewalk by any means either. Their next 3 games are in Cleveland, in Minnesota, and home against Cincinnati, and there's no game where I'm going to say the 49ers can't outright win, as the lowest they've won by in 5 games is 7 points, and even outside of that game, the closest they've won by is 18 points. but what I will say is any team is beatable on any given Sunday. So while yes, I am admittedly drinking the Kool-Aid on the 49ers at the moment, I don't want this video to come across like they're an unbeatable team that is destined to go 20-0 and win the Super Bowl. But after these 3 games, they have a Week 9 bye, then have a tough 5-game stretch of in Jacksonville, home against Tampa, in Seattle on a short week, in Philly, then home against Seattle to play them for the second time in 3 weeks. And again, even for as good as the Niners look through the first 5 weeks, guys, the NFL is a marathon and anything can happen on any given Sunday. But if they continue to play at the level they have through 5 weeks, then yes, there is a very good chance they end up playing for the Lombardi Trophy this year in Las Vegas. The only concern I really have with this team goes back to health, and the concern I have is the long-term sustainability with offensive weapon Christian McCaffrey. Right now, CMC is averaging around 25 touches per game, and while that is obviously helping the team win, remember, they have other playmakers on this offense, and I would love to see guys like Juice or Kyle Juszczyk get the football more, and even target George Kittle more to simply take some of the hits off Christian McCaffrey. Because the last thing I would want for the 49ers is to have CMC enter the postseason after touching the rock 405 times over the course of a 17-game season, which, by the way, is the pace he's on at the moment. Do what you can to protect your guys for the purpose of hoisting that trophy in the second week of February. And what's good for the 49ers is, most of the time, they can. They're beating the hell out of teams right now, and a lot of the time they have the game wrapped up by the end of the third quarter. There was a point where future Hall of Famer Trent Williams said in Week 1 in a win over the Steelers that he wished the Steelers would have a nice 9 or 10 play drive so the offense could get a breather and take a little bit of a break. And I know a lot of teams worry about their pass rush or their offensive line holding up or whatever the case may be, but to actually worry about your guys getting too many touches because you are kicking the other team's ass so often is almost laughable, because nobody ever thinks this would be an actual problem. But that is the one thing I would like to see the 49ers do in a game or two coming up: limit CMC's touches. Obviously, don't take him out of the game entirely, but if you can have a game or two where he has 15 or 16 touches instead of 25 and still win by 14 points, I think that would be very beneficial for this team in the long run. My pick to win the NFC right now would be the 49ers, and I want to say the Lions, Seahawks, and Dallas, who will regroup. These 3 teams will be thorns in the Eagles and 49ers sides, and still don't count Dallas out entirely. And if Hutch has a 2 or 3 sack game against the weak side of the 49ers offensive line, anything is possible. But for now, the Niners are my pick to win the NFC. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 24% of people watching are subscribed, and it makes a big difference. We are closing in on 100K, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough for the support, and until next time, please be safe, and have a great day. Love you guys.